Thank you. I'm Councillor Philip Davis, and I'll be chairing this hearing of Subcommittee A of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. So welcome today, Friday, October the 1st, to this hearing concerning bamboo and consideration of representation in respect to the interim steps imposed on 15th of September 2021. If I could ask everyone to mute their microphones other than those who are speaking, that'll help the internet process. And committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. Again, if we can make sure there are no sound distractions in the background, that would be very helpful. And any distractions brought to my attention which disrupt the proceedings could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another time and date under the regulations for these types of meetings. This is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. And the formal items of business that I have on my agenda are as follows. Item 1, notice of recording webcast. I advise the meeting to note the meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast by the Council's meeting YouTube site, and that members of the press and public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Secondly, declarations of interest. Members are reminded they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies are submitted on behalf of Councillor Straker-Wells, and Councillor Sharp is the nominated substitute member. So can I welcome you to, again, consideration of representations against interim steps in respect to the licence for bamboo, first floor, Cotwall House, Wrottesley Street, Birmingham B54RT. As I said at the beginning, I am Councillor Philip Davis. I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mike Sharp and Councillor Bob Beecher. Also present at the meeting are the following officers: the Licensing Officer, Bipin Nandra, the Committee Manager, Katie Townsend, and the Committee Lawyer, Joanne Swampilai. I'll now go to the parties themselves, and I understand, Mr. Craig, you're here representing the premises, the licence holder.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Yes, Chair, I'm here to represent the licence holder and the applicant for this hearing, and Mr. Kadir. I'll just let Mr. Ahmed, sorry, sat here with me.
Thank you very much. And next, West Midlands Police are represented. Mr. Swallow.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mark Swallow, representing West Midlands Police.
Thank you very much. So firstly, could I ask if any persons making representations, I think this is really addressed to you, Mr. Swallow, wish to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing?
No, Chair.
No. Okay. Procedural rules. Again, I assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out with the notice of hearing. At my discretion, given the nature of today's hearings online, I may vary the procedure, but wish to assure you all of such amendments to any process will not impact on the party right to their hearing. We'll be using the chat function in the usual way. I think it's well understood by the parties here today. And if I could ask you, as our normal practice, to just type in your names for the record on the chat function. I'm having a problem finding it. But okay, I'm just having difficulty myself doing this, but I will do that now, and then we can proceed. That helps the record of the meeting. So thank you very much, everyone, for doing that. And we can now proceed. I don't think anybody's dialed in on audio, telephone. We're all online. So let me just get back to the main screen. There we are. Any problems with bandwidth or whatever, I may ask people to turn off their cameras. But as I say, default position is that members of the committee will keep their cameras on. And if you're speaking, if you could turn the camera on, please. Preliminary points. Do any of the representatives wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? Mr. Craig?
No, Chair, thank you.
Mr. Swallow?
No, Chair, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So procedure is, as you know, that we'll ask firstly the licensing officer to present the report, then the license holder, Mr. Craig, basically will invite to make his case, and again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for that. And then West Midlands Police will be asked to present their arguments, and again, we allow 20 minutes maximum for that. And again, if it's somebody else's turn to speak, if you could mute your audio function, as this will help clarify communication. Members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but we'll try to do so at the end of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Again, you can indicate you wish to speak by verbally in the usual way or by using the chat function. If there's a problem with communication at any point, we may use the chat function to alert the meeting manager, but I think it'll be fairly obvious to me that what's happening, or if not to me, I will be alerted by the officers. Legal advice, could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting while members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We'll then return to the meeting and continue. If at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I'll ask all of you to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until the live stream is restored. Again, if we go into private session, the live stream will be paused, and then we'll resume when we return. At the conclusion of the hearing, I'll invite both parties to make a brief closing submission. And clearly, obviously, no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard. At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from the meeting so we can determine the decision in a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. If we need to clarify any points, you'll be telephoning by the meeting. Okay, that's the procedural points. So with that, can I ask the licensing officer, Mr. Bipinda Nandra, to speak to the report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The premises licence holder has made representations in respect of the interim steps imposed on the 15th of September 2021 following the application from West Midlands Police for an expedited review of the premises licence in respect of Bamboo, First Floor, Cotwell House, Wrottesley Street, Birmingham, B5 4RT. The application was accompanied by a certificate signed by a senior member of the force stating that in their opinion, the licensed premises is associated with serious crime and disorder, which was made under Section 53(8) of the Licensing Act 2003 as amended. In accordance with the regulations, the licensing authority has given the premises licence holder and responsible authorities a copy of the application for review and a copy of the certificate. This hearing has been arranged in order to consider whether it is necessary to take any interim steps in respect of the licence pending the determination of the review. The premises licence is included in the agenda at item E. At this hearing, the licensing authority must consider whether the interim steps are appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and determine whether to withdraw or modify the steps taken. When considering the case, the licensing authority must take into account the senior officer's certificate that accompanies the application, the chief officer's representations, and any representations made by the premises licence holder. Please note that there is no right of appeal to the Magistrates' Court against the licensing authority's decision at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we'll now go on to Mr. Craig to hear from the premises licence holder representative. Mr. Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to one and all. Yeah, I'm just going to give a brief précis of what went previously, because it's relevant to the application today. So the hearing, the review application was made on the 14th of September, and there was a hearing the following day, which I attended with Mr. Ahmed here in this room. At the time, I took issue with a number of matters that were in the review application, and I stressed at the time, actually, I could have just said nothing about those, and I suppose kept my cards close to my chest, because there's always a risk when you make confident assertions that in certain instances that can come back to blow up in your face. But my client was absolutely stridently certain that the matters, certain matters in the review application were incorrect. And why that's important is that it had a bearing on the conduct of the premises in relation to the incident, both before and in the moments that immediately followed it. And in particular was the assertion, no criticism of Mark, by the way, because I know Mark Swallow from West Midlands Police was simply going off information he'd had, and look, these are expedited reviews, they move quickly. Officers have to use the information that's before them as best they can, and that's all Mark was doing. But one of the assertions in there was that the premises hadn't informed the police, and my client was absolutely, that is not the case. Our head doorman, as soon as it became apparent there'd been that somebody had suffered a wounding, immediately went and got the police and told them. And having spoken to Mark on a number of occasions since the 15th about this matter, I'm sure he'll be happy to confirm that. He's viewed the footage, and that is the case. So I don't necessarily need to go through it line by line, but I think it's right for me to say that we wouldn't be sat here now in the position we are with the police if the police hadn't formed a view that what was in the original review application perhaps didn't present the full picture. But look, that's why we have these the ability to challenge the interim steps, because these things are very fast moving. They think information often takes a while for the true picture to emerge, and so that is why we are here today. So we had the hearing on the 15th of September. The application by West Midlands Police to suspend the licence was not opposed by the licence holder, because they recognised that everybody needs to take a step back and try and evaluate what had happened. And you'll note that this is some time after that, more than 2 weeks after that. We've not rushed into this. We actually had a meeting with Mark and his sergeant on the Friday, the 17th, at Lloyd House, and my client spoke perhaps unusually for a meeting where I'm in the room. My client, in fact, did most of the speaking, and I believe, I thought came across very well in terms of how he explained what happened on the night, and then we both invited Mark to go and investigate that. Now, look, Mark has done that, and has been very fair as well in his analysis of what's taken place. And then we've had discussions following from that, and we've arrived at an agreed position, and that agreement was reached yesterday afternoon, although in principle it had been at play for a couple of days. So if I could just invite you for the email that I sent yesterday, just to go through the points in there, because that's essentially you have to determine whether you're going to substitute these proposed steps for the suspension of the licence. As I've said in the email, there is no application in respect of the removal of the DPS. The DPS is gone and will play no active role in licensable activities going forward at the premises. He has the arrangement's been terminated. So I'll deal with the DPS shortly because I think that is quite important too. So there are obviously a number of conditions on the license now, one of which relates to searching, which I think is a bit nebulous and a bit woolly. And so there is a requirement, the second condition down there. And can I just say that there was searching going on the night in question. My client was by the front door most of the time, but what there wasn't being undertaken at the time is metal detection, which is why this further. So there's basically a two-layer. Someone. It would appear, although the knives were found outside the premises, I think it's reasonable to conclude that, given the fact that one, possibly two woundings took place inside the premises, then I think it's reasonable to conclude that that somebody has got something into the premises that they shouldn't. I don't think that's an outlandish thing to suggest on behalf of any objective observer of this situation. And so we've got a second layer in there, which is metal detection. So that there's a requirement that every single person, whenever licensable activities are being carried on from the premises, is subject to a two-stage search. Firstly, a full body search, and then metal detection, and that is a requirement on the license as a condition. And that those two activities will be undertaken by two separate door supervisors, which I would submit is a sensible and prudent step for a number of reasons which should be apparent. There's also a requirement for ID scanner, and my client has purchased an ID scanner. How much was it? £5,500 he spent on that. And I know that's something West Midlands Police would welcome, particularly in the circumstances that we find ourselves. And that's good to go. I mean, it's set up, ready. So if you are minded to lift the suspension, that's good to go straight away. A working bleed kit. Whenever licensable activities are carried on the premises, you've got your bleed kit there. So that's there. A last entry condition of 3 a.m. Safe for people who are popping outside for a cigarette and want to go back in. But otherwise, people can't get in after 3 o'clock, which I actually. Frequently that condition I think is a good thing for a lot of premises, both from a promoting the licensing objectives point of view, but also you don't want people turning up at gone 3 o'clock. They never spend any money, and they're usually worse for wear when they do. So those conditions actually, most clients of mine who've been subject to a condition like that over recent years have all subsequently said to me that actually that's no bad thing that's on there. That the licence holder is required to consult the West Midlands Police whenever they intend to vary the DPS on the premises licence. Well, that may not appear to be especially relevant today, given the fact we haven't even got a DPS as things stand. But obviously, if you are minded to lift the suspension, we're making an application for the new DPS, and I'll go through his CV shortly. But that's Mark and I. Ultimately it's a matter for you, but if you are minded to lift the suspension and impose these conditions, we would look to have these conditions going forward as well. So just thought for completeness, if we dealt them all now as an interim step, that also means if you are minded to lift the suspension and if you are minded to apply these conditions at the full review hearing next Friday, then they will take effect immediately. There's no 21-day lag with them. So that's another reason why we put them in there. And then also the licence holder is required to consult the West Midlands Police if they want to, they're considering changing the company that provides door security. I had some discussions with Mark about the door security provider, and it's right to say that overall, Mark will speak for himself on this. He made some inquiries, and certainly that there's no as things stand, pressure from West Midlands Police to change the door company. And I think based on what I've seen, they did many things that evening that are commendable, in fact. So, but of course, Mark will speak for himself in relation to that and everything else. I just add to that reduction in hours, which you have the power to do as well, because the hours are a condition on the license. So reduction in hours. At the moment, it's 6 a.m. on a Friday and Saturday for licensable activities. And the proposal is that the sale of alcohol by retail is pulled back to 4 a.m. and regulated entertainment and late night refreshment pulled back to 4:30 a.m. So that again, we would invite you to impose that as an interim step. And again, the idea is that will take effect going forward on a more permanent basis. In respect to the DPS, I've spoken to him a couple of times. He's sorry he can't be here today. He's actually doing an engineering course that was already booked in. So unfortunately, he would have liked to have been here, but he can't. Obviously, these things have been. I don't even know till Wednesday night what time and when this hearing was held. So again, that's absolutely no criticism. That's the nature of these events. But I've sent his CV through, and he did work at the premises previously. In fact, he is a personal license holder. I have a signed consent from him, good to go. I think other than ready, I think I don't know if people are still using that expression anymore, but anyway, that's good to go. So we have got a position where we've got a DPS who can step in, and you've seen his CV there. He's worked at Geisha. He previously worked at Bamboo, also Beach House in Solihull, and he has he's also a qualified engineer, is he as well?
Yeah, he's doing the course.
Yeah. So yeah, not that really makes any difference in terms of his abilities to do this, but I've just for purposes of completeness, I've also put Mr. Kadir's Mr. Ahmed's CV on there, although so basically he was working up until March last year, and then lockdown happened, and so his work dried up, and he was back in Birmingham, and then he made a decision. He had a property, sold that property, made a decision to buy this club. So that's why there's a slight gap in his CV, which you can see there. But he does have significant experience in working in and around licensed premises, and you may have some questions for him. He might want to say something about that actually. At the end of this, do you want to just talk about the sort of experience you've got? Yeah. So, look, he realizes he's put a big investment into this place at a time when perhaps lots of people wouldn't be minded to take such a risk. And he's got a lot at stake here, and he wants to make sure that he has a viable and sustainable business. And so it's very much in his interests that he protects his asset and his investment. And so for that reason, as much as any other, I can say on his behalf, he's going to do everything he can to ensure that every available step is taken in order to protect the people who are coming into his premises. Obviously, I did the hearing on the 15th. There was never any suggestion from me on behalf of the license holder that this wasn't a serious incident and shouldn't be taken seriously, and that steps needed to be taken. I also said at that hearing I would, with my client, engage positively with the police, and we went down and saw Mark and his sergeant a couple of days after that at the station and spoke. The meeting went on for some time, in fact, and the premises license holder has gone out and spent speculatively, in fact, £5,500 on a ID scanner. So obviously what's happened is unfortunate, but the licensing regime is about looking forward. And most importantly of all, in terms of my submissions today, that we've got an agreed position with West Midlands Police. You know that the Section 182 guidance states that you should look to the police as your main source of advice in relation to crime and disorder. And I would just reiterate that to you. Clearly, Mark's investigations into this matter have taken him along a path where he feels that he can and comfortable with reaching the agreement that we have to get the place reopened. It's ultimately a matter for you, of course. I'm not trying to usurp that in any way, but I would suggest that where there are two parties, as things stand in relation to today, at least, to a review application, and those parties are in agreement, then unless there is an overwhelming reason not to, I would say that it would be appropriate, highly appropriate for you to follow the agreed path. I'm sure you'll have some questions for Mr. Ahmed. I will just so he can give you a little bit of a précis about himself, I will turn the camera around so he can just let you know about his sort of background in connection with the licensed trade in particular, and perhaps to humanise his CV a little bit. So I'll just turn the camera now.
Hello. Yeah, I've done security at the venue since 2007. I worked as a door supervisor. I've got a vast experience in security management. I've been head doorman at multiple venues, and even with my venue now, I take I'm there every night we're open, and I do take a front line with security in the sense, making sure everyone's in position, everyone's doing their role, searching, customer service. I mean, even that night in question, there's nothing more than myself or my staff or team could have done. Like, we did everything that we could have, from dealing with the situation to splitting up the two parties, to liaising with the police, to being cooperative, to everything we could have. So I understand how serious this is, and going forward, we want to work with the police and have a good relationship with the licensing and the police, and learn from this, so it does not happen again. So.
Thank you. So I don't know how I'm doing on the 20-minute front.
You're pretty much there, I think.
Well, I didn't think I'd take that up, but I have. But those are the representation on behalf of the licence holder.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right, members' questions. Councillor Sharp, do you have any questions?
Yes, please, Chair. Can I just ask, unless I've missed it on the report, what time does the club actually close?
Presently 6 a.m. on a Friday and Saturday. Well, licensable activities cease at 6 a.m. presently, Councillor Sharp.
You know that you said PM to us.
Oh, did I?
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, Councillor Beecham. I do apologise. That would be somewhat strange for a city centre venue. No, it definitely does not close at 6 p.m. 6 a.m. Forgive me.
But you're proposing to alter the alcohol sale to 4 o'clock.
Reduce to 4 a.m. and regulate entertainment and late night refreshment to 4:30. Yes.
Okay.
And that's arisen as part of the conversation I've had with West Midlands Police, and my clients agreed to that.
Councillor Sharp, do you have any more questions?
No, that's fine, thanks, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Beecham.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you give me some more information on this scanner? How you propose to use it? How it's going to benefit the safety and security of the place?
So yeah, I've got a number of other clients who have these scanners. They are they basically take a record. So it's valid forms of ID, which is passport. Not that people are going to take their passport out, frankly. It's driving license. It takes a is it hologram based? Is it?
It is,
Do you want to?
yeah.
I'll let my client and I'll explain the benefits, but
With the ID scanner, they're the number one ID scanner provider in the UK. They've got over 6,000 machines with over 2 million profiles. So say, for example, if someone commits an offence in Manchester, if they scan their ID at our venue, it will show up that they've committed an offence or they've been refused. So it not only checks for the authenticity of the ID, as in the passport or the driving license, it stores their information and it's linked to over 6,000 units around the UK, and there's 18 within Birmingham at the moment in use.
yeah, I would say also in broad terms, I would say there are two overarching benefits. One of all, you've got a verifiable and accurate record of who has attended or is attending your premises at a particular time, which obviously, if there are incidents, that has huge benefits. But actually, arguably, an even bigger benefit is the fact that it's a deterrent to people who perhaps would otherwise feel they could act in a way more freely than otherwise would be the case, because it will just stop certain people going to a place if they know that their name is going to be on the record there. So that its benefit is twofold, Councillor Beecham. And these things are, I mean, they are highly technical. They're very advanced these days.
Do you have a running contract with the people that control this?
Have a running contract?
Yes.
Yeah.
They pay a £99 subscription a month.
Okay. So on top of the purchase, there's a £99 subscription every month. So yes is the answer.
And how do you make sure that everybody goes through this?
Absolutely, it's a condition. It's a condition. Whenever licensable activities have been carried on, every single person, including entertainers and staff, are required to put their ID in. Yes. No ifs, no buts. There's no wriggle room on that condition.
And should someone fail, how would you operate the refusal?
Well, there's no ID, no entry. That's it. If you've not got it, you don't come in. And that's on the condition as well, Councillor Beecham.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that is your presentation then, Mr. Craig, is it? Yep.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. So I'll now move on to Mark Swallow of West Midlands, please. Mr. Swallow.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, obviously this is a very serious incident where two people were stabbed on the morning of Saturday, the 11th of the 9th, 2021, and that resulted in the interim steps being put into place on the 15th of September, those being the right steps at that time to be put in place, and I thank the councillors for that. However, that hiatus has allowed us in the interim to look more closely into what happened and why it happened. Because obviously that was very early in the investigation. Some things were not clear. Obviously, as Mr. Craig said, there was variance between the police account and the account of the premises licence holder. What I found was that what I expected to find was that the truth of the matter lay somewhere in the middle. There was some confusions that I was able to clear up. However, what I did find was, in my view, that the premises licence holder, although I think he will readily admit that he could have had a more active role in some of the administration, some of that was left with the designated premises supervisor. And the designated premises supervisor, whether through laziness or through cooperating with other people, let the premises licence holder down. That resulted in that evening's events being not what they should have been, not having the levels of control they should have had, or proper consideration being able to be given to should the event have taken place at all. Obviously, that all did occur. I can confirm that the premises did speak to the police. They went and got the police themselves. I've seen that on the CCTV and acknowledge that. I met with Mr. Ahmed, Mr. Craig, and have had numerous conversations with them as to what had gone on, what issues there were, and what was an appropriate way forward. Obviously, I'm looking for a proportionate method of going forward of promoting the licensing objectives. As you've heard, there is an agreed position between West Midlands Police and the premises licence holder. Mr. Craig's gone through those things that we believe would be conditions that, if put in place, would be a proportionate method to prevent this issue happening again and to promote the licensing objectives. Key to this was the removal of the designated premises supervisor, who I believe hoodwinked the people around him in quite a sophisticated way that wouldn't have been obvious to people unless they were looking into it quite deeply. And the other things that have been put forward are, firstly, in regard to the ID scanner, that means that people will not be able to go into those premises under a cloak of anonymity, because that cloak of anonymity means that people are more likely to do things that they shouldn't because they're less likely to be traced. That will not be the case with an ID scanner. So there's no ID, no entry. There is obviously the searching takes place now. All persons going into the premises are searched. I don't think it can be argued that the search regime on that evening failed. That can happen, and so putting a metal detector in, that option then means that is a double-skinned way of achieving that aim and is less likely to fail.
The arch form, is that?
No, that is wands. There is arches and there's wands. Both have advantages over each other, both have disadvantages, but effectively achieve the same thing. One is you walk through an arch and it shows if there's metal and whereabouts on your body it is. A wand you wave over people and it makes a bleeping sound, and you usually see lights where it encounters metal. I've used both and they achieve the same objective.
Thank you.
Obviously, there's the bleed kit has been mentioned. A last entry time has been agreed. That is important because the later the time of people entering, the more likely you're going to have problematic people entering. Obviously, there's an earlier finish time to the licensable activity on the weekend in order to make it to reduce risk. The later the time, the more increase the risk. In relation to the consultation with West Midlands Police about the changes of DPS and changes of door security, that's again a safety net. We appreciate that people may well fall out, things may happen whereby they part company and another set of people then have to come in. That could be any set of people, it could be the same DPS coming back. This is in order that that can't happen. There has to be some form of consultation. I believe those things will hopefully stop the issues that occurred on the 11th of September occurring again, and I would commend that to you, councillors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Beecham, have you any other questions?
No, thank you.
Councillor Sharp?
Yeah, please, if I can just clarify something. The ID scanner, when you go in, it's got to have a photograph on it. Is that correct?
Right, the ID scanner will scan a number of different forms of ID, usually with a photograph on. So in terms of a driving licence, if you've got the old style driving licence whereby there's no photograph on, then that it won't scan that. However, the new style driving licence where you have your photograph on, it scans that. There are a military pass, that's another form of ID, your passport, or there's a scheme called Pass, and you can obtain an ID if you wish to go into premises, which has a hologram on it and a photograph.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's members' question. So thank you, Mr. Swallow. I think we're right back to you for any closing summary you want to give us. Anything you want to add to what you've said?
Thank you, councillors. The only thing I can say is that I have been impressed with Mr. Ahmed's wish to take on feedback, wish to improve things. He's been prepared to change in a way that's difficult for him, makes it harder for him to carry out his business in order to achieve the licensing objectives. And I would therefore commend this to you. Thank you, councillors.
Very much. So back to you, Mr. Craig, for some final remarks.
Yeah, I won't be long. Thank you, Mark, for your words, and I thought you were very fair in what you said. I would agree with Mark's analysis from a personal point of view in relation to the DPS, and that's actually as important a step as any of the others. Obviously, you've already taken that step. We're not seeking to undermine that or challenge that in any way. We have an alternative DPS. If you are minded to lift the suspension, I'll whack that DPS variation in straight away in order that the premises can lawfully operate over the weekend. But otherwise, no, simply this is, I think, a good example of a licence holder being faced with a situation, dealing with it in a responsible way, engaging with the police, recognising that there are improvements that need to be made, making those improvements, investing in equipment that enables them to make those improvements, and a good example of responsible authorities and the licensed trade working together in the best interests of the furtherance of the promotion of the licensing objectives. And so you have an agreed position between the licence holder and the police, and I would admit that's something, broadly speaking, should be welcomed. In general terms, it's absolutely right that the trade and responsible authorities should endeavour to work together as best they can to provide a safer environment as possible for people coming into this city on a weekend. And so for all those reasons, I know Mr. Ahmed will be there, subject to you lifting the suspension. He will be there and keeping a close eye on everything. And I know how keen he is to prove himself to everybody. And actually, and he said this to me throughout, to have a really positive working relationship with the police going forward as well. And I think this is a good springboard for that. So for all those reasons, I would invite you to substitute or lift the suspension and impose the conditions that we've advanced as an interim step in conjunction with the modification of the hours as per my email. And thank you for listening.
Okay, well, thank you very much to all the parties. Thank you, Mr. Swallow. Thank you, Mr. Craig and Mr. Ahmed, for your information to us. I'll now ask all parties to leave the MS Teams meeting, and the members of the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. We'll rejoin this meeting when we will announce the substantive decision of the subcommittee, with the full written reasons for the decision being sent out before the end of the statutory time limit, which I think is today. So thank you very much for that. And as we're saying, we are coming back into this meeting.
Do we stay on, or do we get emailed or and told to come back in? Or
I'll need to clarify that, because this is a slight departure from the normal procedure.
It's 10:48, Chair. Shall we say 11:05 to come back in here?
Okay, so if you,
I just rejoined the same link as before, yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
Or you can stay in here and turn your camera off and mute your microphone, and then you're still in here.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
either way, we rejoin this link at 11:05.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and colleagues, if you wanted a slight comfort break, we'll gather in the private session in 5 minutes. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Baljinder, are you still doing the live stream? Thank you very much. Stream is resumed. So welcome again to this hearing of the licensing House, Rockbursey Street, Birmingham, B54RT. Consideration of
Chairman, you're broken up.
sorry. Repeat that. So welcome again to this hearing for Bamboo in consideration of interim steps imposed on the 15th of September 2021. Having heard the representations, we have resolved to lift the interim steps imposed on the 15th of September, and we will adopt the new steps as suggested at the hearing. The decision will be ready by 1 p.m. today. Did everybody get that, given that there was some interference?
Yes, you're lifting the suspension and there's new steps. Thank you very much. Thank you all, and I hope everybody has a nice weekend.
Okay. So there we are. So thank you very much, particularly from the parties for their information. And again, I'll echo that comment about having a good weekend. So thank you very much. That is the close of the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.